For question 29, given that function f(x) is ln 2x plus 1, first state the domain and range for this function. So for domain, ln function is our special case. So we need to do some calculation in order to get the x value where it is finding our domain. So for log, what the log brings here in the bracket there, it should be greater than 0. So x should be greater than negative half of 1 over 2, negative half. So therefore our domain of the function it will equals to negative 1 over 2 to infinity. Meanwhile, for range of the function, so log is not our special case in our range. So the answer will be negative infinity to infinity. So here will be our domain marks and range marks. Second, B, find the inverse function of this f(x) and then state its domain and range. Hence, find the value of x which inverse function equals to 0. So first of all, we have to find out what is our inverse function. Let our inverse function equals to y, and then when we inverse it, f inverse become f, then domain become range, range become domain. So for fy, substitute our y into our function here, it will become ln 2y plus 1. Then we have to express and find out what is our y. Once we find out our y, we can get our f inverse. So we unlock this ln, we'll get e to the power of x. Then we move our 1 to the right hand side, become negative 1, and then divide by 2. So this is our f inverse, which is exponential function minus 1 divided by 2. And then state its domain and range. So domain f inverse will be referring to the range of the function. Meanwhile, for the range of the function, we were referring to the domain. So we can refer back to our questions, our answer in part A. While domain of the f inverse, it will be equal to the range of the function, which is negative infinity to infinity. Meanwhile, range for f inverse, it will equals to the domain of function, which is negative 1 over 2 to infinity. Hence, then means use whatever we already found here, find the value of x where f inverse equals to 0. So when f inverse x equals to 0 means that ex minus 1 over 2 will be equals to 0. Find out our x value. So multiply 2 to the right hand side, it will become 0. Move 1 to the right hand side, it will become positive 1. And then when we want to find our x, we will log e. So log e will equals to ln 1. So x will equals to 0. So what is important concept here? We can see how we perform our inverse. That will be our first concept. And then simplify. Simplify until we find out what is our y. Then that will be our inverse function. Then state out its domain and range. After that, it equals our f inverse function equals to 0 and simplify until we get the x equals to 0. Next, for question C, they ask us to sketch graph f(x) and inverse at the same axis. So means that we are going to draw our function f(x), then we will do the reflection on the axis of reflection y equals to x, and then we get our inverse function graph. So first of all, we have to draw our function f(x). So make sure we draw our x-axis properly, y-axis, and the axis of refraction, which is y equals to x. So this is how we're setting. Label our origin 0, and then we will start to draw our function of log, which is ln 2x plus 1. So when we notice that our domain is start from negative half, so here is our asymptote. So our asymptote will start from negative half. X equals to negative half. So after we draw our asymptote, we can use our calculator to check our coordinate, whether it is above our refraction axis or below our refraction axis. So for this graph, before the coordinate of 0, it will lower than refraction axis y equals to x. But after the coordinate 0, it will more than, so it will above the refraction axis, and after the coordinate of some point, it will going back below than refraction axis. So we have to get to the function graph correctly, then only we can inverse the function. Then only we can draw out the inverse graph. So for draw out the inverse graph, we're going to refract it. We're going to refract it using our refraction axis, which is y equals to x. So first of all, for the vertical asymptote, we will get the refraction to become a horizontal asymptote. Axis occur at here. And we label straight away, this is y equals to negative 1 over 2. So the graph will be going refraction at here. So this is our F inverse. So you might fold your paper, and then you can do the refraction on your paper. So our graph here, 3 marks, we will give the first marks to the original graph fx, which is log, where you draw it correctly with label fx, intercept at 0, and then vertical asymptote. And then for the refraction, it will give you another marks. Lastly, when you label everything, our x-axis, y-axis, and origin, everything graph is well labeled, we will give another marks for diagram here, for your graphing here.